Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we sift through stacks of information and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Today, we're plunging into a topic that, well, it's often invisible, but it shapes nearly everything we see and read. It profoundly influences how we understand the world. As graphic design legend Joseph Miller Brockman once observed, just as in nature, systems of order govern, so human activity itself has been distinguished by the quest for order. He said, the desire to bring order to the bewildering confusion of appearances reflects a deep human need. And that profound human need for order is precisely our jumping off point today. We're taking a deep dive into the fundamental principles of graphic design, grids, and page layouts. These aren't just obscure, invisible frameworks. They are powerful tools that subtly dictate how we consume and understand information. They're the silent architects of clarity, the unsung heroes of visual communication.
It's absolutely true. Think about it. Every magazine you flip through, every website you browse, the design of a book you hold in your hands, it all relies on an underlying structure. That structure, the grid, organizes information, makes it digestible, and it influences your very perception of trustworthiness and professionalism. This deep dive is all about pulling back the curtain on that invisible architecture, showing you the intentionality behind what often feels intuitive.
Our primary source for today's exploration is Best Practices for Graphic Designers, Grids and Page Layouts by Amy Graver and Ben Jura. Our mission is to unpack how these essential tools help designers achieve their communication goals, making complicated information accessible and creating order out of what could otherwise be, well, visual chaos. Graver and Jura's book is packed with real-world examples and case studies from top designers, giving us a unique behind-the-scenes look at how these principles are applied.
And this deep dive offers a shortcut to understanding the intentionality behind thoughtful design. Whether you're prepping for a high-stakes meeting where your presentation needs to be impeccably clear, or catching up in a new field with complex diagrams, or maybe you're just incredibly curious about why some things simply look right and others don't. You'll never look at a page or a screen the same way again. You'll be able to discern the invisible architecture shaping your perception.
Okay, let's unpack the foundational role of grids in design. It might sound basic, but layouts and grids truly are the most fundamental tools for graphic designers. They are the scaffolding, the skeletal system for effective communication.
That's a great way to put it. A designer's primary goal is clear communication, making complex information understood, transforming abstract ideas into concrete visuals. Without a solid layout and grid system, that becomes nearly impossible. These tools organize information into hierarchies, groups, columns, enabling a clear and ultimately useful design. They're the hidden structure that allows your eye to effortlessly navigate.
So while elements like fonts, colors, and images certainly embellish a design and draw you in, they're really just the surface, aren't they?
Exactly.
The initial groundwork of a solid, thoughtful layout is what holds the entire design together. It's what transforms ambiguity into order, allowing the embellishments to truly sing.
And when we talk about masters of order, we have to talk about Vignelli Associates. For over 40 years, Massimo Vignelli and his team refined their expertise in information organization, deeply rooted in the modernist tradition. Their work, from books to direct mail, it's just a testament to a consistent, grid-based approach.
Vignelli's philosophy is truly a profound shift in thinking for designers. He famously said, "The content determines the container." How did this idea that the words themselves dictate the very shape of the book, how did that revolutionize things? It sounds almost counterintuitive at first.
It really forced designers to truly listen to the content first. Instead of trying to force text into some predefined, maybe arbitrary box, they built the box around the text. And this isn't just about aesthetics. It's fundamentally about maximizing legibility and absorption. The real insight is that the container serves the content, always. It ensures the design itself sort of disappears so the message shines through.
Right.
Vignelli believed the grid provides consistency and structure, sure, but the excitement, the flair that comes from all the other elements in the design, the grid is the silent facilitator, not the showstopper.
But their process wasn't just about creating static pages. They viewed books, magazines, even tabloids as cinematic objects, focusing intensely on pacing and flow. An essential step for them was determining the sequence of layouts by building tight sketches into storyboards. They would literally lay out every spread so they could see pages together and individually, adjusting until the pacing and flow felt just right. This storyboard then became their guiding map, like a director's cut for the reader's eye.
Yeah, and the overarching philosophy of Vignelli Associates, which really connects to the bigger picture here, is that a design whose structure is invisible to you, the viewer, is inherently stronger. This leads to a timeless clarity. Their neutral, systematic approach, aided by an unobtrusive grid, is precisely what made them masters of information organization. When you effortlessly absorb information from a Vignelli design, it's because the grid is working so effectively you don't even notice it's there.
Now that we've seen how grids function in practice, let's quickly define their core components. Because grids aren't just one thing, they're a precise system of elements working together.
Right. First, we have margins. That's the negative space around the content, between the edges of the page and the live area where content sits. They focus attention, provide rest for the eye, and they separate subordinate information like page numbers or running heads. Think of them as the breathing room.
Okay, breathing room. Then there are flow lines.
Yeah, flow lines. These are horizontal alignments that guide your eye across the page. They create clear bands of information. They're like invisible guide rails for text and images.
Got it. Guide rails.
And of course, columns. The vertical containers that divide that live area to hold content. They can vary in width, even within the same grid, to accommodate different types of information.
And when columns meet flow lines, you get modules.
Exactly. Modules. These are the individual units of space, like building blocks, that, when you repeat them, form the grid's recurring pattern.
So if you combine groups of those modules,
Then you get spatial zones. These are distinct areas that create consistent containers for content, ensuring uniformity across the design, like designated spots for certain types of info.
and finally, markers.
Markers. These are specific areas for consistently appearing content like folios, page numbers, running heads, or maybe icons. They really aid navigation and consistency.
Okay, so typically grids are this invisible underlying structure. But what happens when a designer decides to, pull back the curtain, make the structure part of the show? Tell us about Oikos Associati, who dared to make the grid itself the star for their brochure for Cleef's Thin Space event.
Oh, that's a fantastic example. That's exactly what they did. They didn't just break the rules, they made the rules visible. They turned the very structure into a provocative design element. Their concept was about a two-dimensional surface acquiring volume, and they used this geometric pattern of triangular modules as the primary organizational element. It wasn't just behind the content. It almost was the content's defining characteristic in a way.
That's a real convention breaker. The triangular modules were actually removed or merged to create content areas, all unified by this clear, provocative method of space division. It resulted in a contemporary layout with large images, text, and that ever-present geometric pattern. But they didn't stop there with just the visual aspect.
No, they didn't. Oikos Associati reproduced those triangular shapes from the installation right on the brochure cover, actually cutting them directly into the paper itself. This created movement, 3 dimensions, and an ever-changing effect, transforming a simple sheet of paper into something tactile, 3-dimensional. It's about engaging you through touch, not just sight.
Making the grid a physical, interactive element. Wow.
Oh.
And the genius of it extended even further. This striking pattern was carried through to all other event materials, from promotional bags to invitations. Even the typography was locked together to form a texture reminiscent of the grid pattern, reinforcing the visual theme across everything.
It essentially made the grid an active participant in the design, rather than just a silent organizer. A really bold move.
Now let's move into the basic grid structures the foundational toolkit designers use to start building. The simplest form is the single column, or manuscript, grid. This creates one standard area for continuous text, often seen in books or essays, making the text the undeniable main feature.
Right. But while it's simple, this form comes with its own challenges. It can be quite static visually, so designers put extra care into that subordinate information, headers, footers, folios, chapter heads, to add visual interest and guide you. The key insight here is that the relationship of the text area to the page itself profoundly affects the feel. Wider margins create stability,
Okay.
while narrow margins create tension. Designers might use mathematical ratios or even asymmetrical placement to achieve a sense of balance and movement. Even things like hanging punctuation subtly influence how you perceive the margins.
So if you're dealing with more diverse content, maybe different kinds of information on one page, that's where multicolumn grids come in.
Exactly. They are incredibly powerful for organizing a wide range of material. Columns can be used independently for small blocks, in sequence for running text, or even combined by crossing the gutters to make wider columns. This flexibility is truly transformative.
But with that flexibility comes complexity, I imagine.
For sure. Designers really have to consider all the possible configurations. The width of the internal gutters, the space between columns, and the position and frequency of those flow lines are crucial for controlling subdivisions. A particularly useful flow line in multi-column grids is the hang line.
Hang line.
Yeah, it establishes a consistent starting point for, say, the first line of text in each column, or maybe for images placed at the top of columns. This helps you process information quickly because you know exactly where to look when you turn the page.
A perfect example of this multi-column flexibility is Uppercase magazine. It's known for its eclectic, reader-submitted content design, illustration, craft. Designer Janine Van Gool uses a highly divided multi-column grid, specifically a 12-column grid, to accommodate all this diversity while maintaining unity. How does that level of flexibility actually benefit the reader, beyond just making the designer's life easier?
Well, it creates an experience where really disparate content, maybe a long-form article right next to a quick quote or a small image, all feels like it belongs together. Imagine a visual patchwork. It allows Van Gool to interlock images and text in ways that wouldn't be possible with a simpler grid. It moves beyond a purely linear narrative,
Right.
making the reading experience much richer and more visually engaging. That 12-column grid allows for wide columns for long text or really small, narrow columns for short, bite-sized content. It offers extreme versatility.
And Van Gool actually states that despite redesigns to keep the magazine fresh, that 12-column grid has proven so useful it will likely remain its foundation. That's a huge testament to its enduring power.
It really is. Okay, moving on. Modular grids. These are compound grids combining both columns and rows, creating those small content areas we call modules. These modules can be combined both vertically and horizontally to create diverse spatial zones. They bring a feeling of order and mathematical rationality to even complex publications. This type of grid also has significant historical context, emerging from Bauhaus ideals in mid-20th century Switzerland. So they often carry a historical or philosophical meaning through their rational objectivity.
Then we have hierarchical grids. These sound a bit different.
They are. These are a great solution for projects that aren't really conducive to regular structuring or repeated intervals. Instead, they create specific alignments within the material to develop an information hierarchy. Their reliance on intuitive placement based on the specific content means an in-depth review of the materials is crucial up front.
Where would you typically see those?
They're well suited for applications like packaging, posters, and websites, offering a more organic navigation than, say, a rigid modular grid.
And for getting type perfectly aligned.
That's where baseline grids come in. This is a substructure, like a grid within the grid, that creates a series of horizontal rows based on the types leading, the space between lines. Its main job is ensuring that the baselines of all rows of type, regardless of typeface or size, align consistently across columns and gutters. This creates a beautifully ordered feeling for the text, especially important in multi-column layouts. It maintains that visual harmony.
Okay, and finally, compound grids.
Right. Compound grids basically integrate multiple grid systems into one organized armature. Think of it like superimposing a 2-column grid over a 3-column grid, for example.
What's the advantage there?
The benefits are clear. They maintain cohesiveness like consistent margins and flow lines while allowing for more layout variations, preventing you, the reader, from getting confused. They're excellent for problem-solving specific layout challenges like elements that need to bleed off the page while staying proportionally related to things that don't bleed.
Now, let's peek behind the grid and talk about the technical considerations and the role of proportionality. While a controlling grid system provides consistency, some designers also involve mathematics to add another layer of organization and rationalization.
Absolutely. When setting up a grid, you absolutely must consider the amount, type, and importance of the content. This dictates the basic structure. But when it comes to type and column widths, there's a really delicate balance. What happens if a designer ignores the ideal range for line length? Does the reader actually feel that imbalance?
Oh, absolutely. If lines are too wide, especially over 75 or maybe 90 characters, your eye literally gets lost searching for the next line. It's almost physically tiring to read.
And conversely, if your lines are too short, you get what designers call rags, those jagged, uneven edges on the right side of a text block.
Like a messy tear in paper.
Exactly, full of awkward gaps and too many hyphens. It doesn't just look bad, it actually makes it harder to read because your eye keeps jumping around erratically. It hinders your ability to just flow through the information, create a sort of visual choppiness.
This challenge is magnified when you're designing for an audience that's hyper-aware of these details, like the readers of How W magazine. This publication faces the unique challenge of designing for designers, a persnickety crowd highly sensitive to rags and leading.
A good grid system is paramount for How W Magazine. It's essential for maintaining cohesion between articles while simultaneously allowing for creative risks and boundary-pushing designs. As Bridget McCarran, How W Senior Art Director, puts it, the grid allows the magazine to hold together as a whole piece of work instead of merely a collection of disjointed articles and images. It's the invisible structure that enables creativity.
And this raises an important point about reader expectations. Once you're familiar with the publication's grid, say, where image captions typically appear, designers can either meet those expectations or surprise readers by treating these elements in a non-uniform way. But crucially, without an established grid, that opportunity to break the norm and truly delight the reader is lost. The grid enables the breaking of rules.
That's a great point.
Even their cover grid demonstrates this flexibility, allowing artistic play while keeping constant elements in fixed positions.
Right. And beyond column widths, type and vertical increments are vital. Leading that space between lines of type directly influences the size of vertical divisions, like modules or flow lines. The height of modules within a grid should always be divisible by the baseline grid increments to avoid sloppy, inconsistent horizontal gutters.
So, like, the math has to work out.
Exactly. For example, if you have 10p type with 13p leading, your module height needs to be divisible by 13. This ensures all type sizes relate consistently, so text areas start and end at fixed points.
And it's not just mathematical. When considering type imbalance in columns, designers also employ a purely visual and aesthetic approach based on the typeface's movement.
Yeah, some typefaces, like the romantic ones, Bodoni and Didot, have a really strong vertical axis. If you use too much positive leading, the line measure or column width might need adjustment to visually balance this strong vertical motion, just to create visual harmony.
Let's talk about the golden section. This isn't just some abstract design theory, is it? It's a ratio.
It is approximately 1.1.61803 found in the Fibonacci sequence. And it appears everywhere in nature, pine cones, sunflower shells. Its intentional use throughout history, from the ancient Greeks to Renaissance artists to Le Corbusier's modular, suggests a deep subconscious human appreciation for its harmony. In design, it helps create this inherent balance that our eyes just find naturally pleasing.
But the mathematics involved in grids go beyond these elegant ratios. There are fundamental calculations designers must address up front, like how much content fits on a page, how many pages are needed, how pages will split for printing. How do these seemingly mundane arithmetic considerations actually contribute to something like sustainable design?
That's a crucial point. This early arithmetic is actually a hallmark of sustainable design. By selecting the printer and paper stock early on, designers can adjust page size or count to eliminate waste and maximize the paper area, ensuring full, even press forms. It's about integrating efficiency and environmental responsibility right into the design process from the very start.
New Zealand-based Lucid Design beautifully exemplifies the application of these principles, especially in web design. While web design is inherently grid-based, Lucid Design proactively considers the grid up front to determine how the interface will function with different content types.
They chose a 12-column grid for its extreme versatility, allowing them to merge columns into various configurations while maintaining a consistent, organized layout. This balance between flexibility and structure is key. For Aquaculture New Zealand's website, the sheer quantity of information and diverse audiences made this highly flexible grid essential. They used a 3.6.3 layout to make the work the focal point, with a 2.2.2 subdivision for project overviews.
And the result for the user experience.
It was seamless integration of imagery with text, creating a site that felt incredibly clean, elegant, and accessible. This approach prevented viewers from feeling overwhelmed, encouraging you to stay longer and find everything you needed. A clear win for user experience driven by an intelligent grid.
Now let's shift our focus to hierarchy and organization of information. Guiding the eye. Think of hierarchy as visual hand-holding. When done correctly, it directs your eyes, telling you what's most important first and guiding you dynamically through the layout.
It's an ordering system for elements controlled by the grid, providing an additional layer of navigation. Visual consistency in hierarchy allows for efficient access to all tiers of information, from most to least important. The key insight here is that contrast in all its forms, scale, space, position, typography, color, is absolutely essential to establishing hierarchy. It's the relationship between elements that gives them importance, non-intrusively drawing your eye.
One of the most direct ways to establish hierarchy is by increasing scale. If you want something to stand out, make it bigger. Seems simple enough.
It does, but there's a trap. If all elements have massive scale, then nothing stands out. No single element can be more important if nothing is less important. It just becomes visual noise. Instead, progressive scale relationships define rhythm and impact. They subtly move you through the layout and give you a focal point, guiding your eye without you even realizing it.
Typographic techniques also profoundly compact flow and hierarchy. A systematic approach to typography creates unity and a visual language for similar content. You can achieve contrast and emphasis by changing font size, weight, or even the typeface itself, right?
Exactly. And careful typeface pairing can bring one element forward and push another back while maintaining overall cohesion. For instance, Alexander Isley, Inc., designed Pack Trigger, a bilingual magazine for the Yiddish Book Center. They used careful font selection for headlines, subheads, body copy, creating visual weight and flow that worked in both languages. A subtle hierarchy that didn't feel heavy-handed.
Next, negative space as a map. This is crucial for accessibility. It provides paths for the eye to navigate through the composition, directing you where and when to look. We often think of negative space as just empty space, but how does it become an active component of the design?
That's a great question. It's far from empty. Simply adding more space isn't enough. Creating asymmetry with negative space actively impacts the composition. It affects weight, stability, and movement to draw the eye or cause it to linger. Centered content with equal surrounding space, that creates a static layout. But ample, well-placed negative space also allows you time to rest and absorb information, making it a very real component of every layout.
Interesting.
Sense's Design Factory beautifully demonstrated this for the Croatian Designers Society, using dynamic negative space with images close to the trim for tension, balanced by large areas of rest.
Then there's using relative position to establish importance, so moving things around.
Basically, yes. Altering an element's position or orientation, like rotating it or outdenting it from the main text block, creates distinct contrast and draws the eye. If a standard treatment is established, breaking that rule for position provides emphasis and interest, adding visual weight. SVP Partners did this brilliantly for a newsletter for Cabot Corporation. The title, rotated 90 degrees when closed, gained tremendous weight, then shifted orientation as the newsletter opened, allowing a smooth read into the headline. Clever stuff.
And finally, color can bring content forward or push it back. Color is incredibly powerful for emphasizing content.
Absolutely. Warm colors like reds and yellows tend to move forward visually, while cool colors like blues and greens recede. Darker colors generally advance as well. By understanding this, designers can strategically place key content in warm, dark, or bright-colored boxes to immediately draw your eye and dictate the reading order. 804, a Dusseldorf-based agency, used this effectively in communications for Sports Schul Hennef, where magenta boxes instantly drew the eye to key content. It just jumps out at you.
So what does this all mean for designers tackling massive projects like exhibitions? Consider Brandon Bird Design's challenge for A Gathering Place for Freedom, commemorating the 200th anniversary of the African Meeting House. He had to condense 200 years of diverse materials, maps, photos, poetry, artifacts across 3 floors into a dynamic, cohesive experience. That sounds daunting.
It really does. His solution was to divide information into 8 distinct sections, marked by bright red fabric banners, which effectively became the start of the exhibit's grid system. He designed large wall panels with a system for titles, narratives, infographics, images, and captions. This tiered hierarchy, combined with a clear wayfinding system, was paramount. The key insight here is how starting with a solid grid system unified this massive exhibit into a manageable, beautiful, and consistent visitor experience. It simplified a truly daunting task.
We see a similar application of flexible grids in packaging design. Elements, a marketing and design agency, faced the task of redesigning Seabrook Farms' entire 23-product frozen food line. The grid they developed had to be flexible enough to handle everything from short product names like cut okra to very long ones like Normandy-style vegetables, plus health claims, cooking instructions, across different package styles like boxes and poly bags.
And the time invested in refining that flexible grid paid off long term. As the client continues to grow, the grid allows for seamless line extensions, leading to increased sales and brand recognition. It's a sustainable design process, where upfront rigor leads to lasting efficiency.
Finally, let's look at the official manufacturing company, or OMFGCO. They faced a unique challenge creating a brand identity for Olympic provisions. Inherent architectural divisions, windows, walls, pillars, doors, created a rigid grid within the existing space for their graphics. How do you design effectively when the grid is already physically imposed on you like that?
You adapt. OMFGCO designed within this imposed grid, structuring their work to function, whether it was on a stack of salamis, double doors with thick frames, or even a flashing meat eat sign.
A meat eat sign.
Yeah, it was customized for a double door and ingeniously changed meaning when bulbs burned out, allowing it to say both eat and meat. Really clever. For product labels, the salami width itself determined the narrow column widths, ensuring crucial information was visible when stacked. It was a functional and clever design system that has worked across varied, predefined applications. They embraced the constraints.
Now let's dive into page and content structure, which really is the blueprint of communication. When approaching a new project, one of the first steps is structuring the content area itself. This involves considering the size, proportions, live area, and even how you, the viewer, interact with the piece folding it, reading across pages, just holding it.
Right, and you have to balance strategic, aesthetic, and practical needs. Will it fit into an envelope? Is it easy to transport? Does it need to be legible from a distance? The functionality of the piece should never be compromised for the sake of a more aesthetically pleasing size or shape. It's about making sure beauty serves purpose.
And it's fascinating how standard industrial sizes and historically pleasing proportions have emerged over time. Things like mathematical ratios, the golden section, even musical relationships.
Exactly. And these contexts are often unconsciously read into the design by you, the viewer, adding to its perceived harmony. Beyond these ratios, content-driven decisions heavily influence page structure. Narrow pages with strong vertical movement imply quick consumption, like newspapers. Slightly wider formats encourage slow, deliberate reading, better for prose. Horizontal images need appropriate formats, and complex diagrams might require specific page shapes.
Like Sergio Alves' design for Núcleo de Jornalismo.
Precisely. He used a large format and rigid grid to accommodate varied journal content without clutter, allowing for short column widths and luxurious margins. It served the content perfectly.
Moving to page margins, they serve several purposes beyond just framing content. They aid design, protect content from trimming, prevent it from being obscured by your hands.
Aesthetically, equal margins tend to create static pages, while asymmetrical margins activate the negative space and create dynamism. For facing pages in books or brochures, there's a common convention. Margins progressing from smallest at the spine to largest at the foot.
This attention to detail can even evoke emotional responses. Caserta Design faced a challenge with the Connecticut Food Bank, convincing them to move from a standard letter-sized annual report while fitting 500 donor names per page.
Fred Caserta's vision was to convey urgency with a taller, narrower format, creating tension. This practical choice was also strategic. A 5-column grid with a highly legible, albeit tiny, 5-put font maximized donors per page, reducing the overall page count and actually saving the client money.
And that cost savings had a wonderful ripple effect, didn't it?
It did. It allowed for high-quality photography and the use of uncoated Mohawk paper, which beautifully held the knocked-out type and gave the book warmth. And Caserta used awkwardly placed lines, typography, and gradients to convey the feeling of uneasiness related to the theme of hunger. The CEO praised the clean and clear design. It was a powerful example of design serving an emotional message.
Now let's define the live area. This is the portion of the page where the primary content actually sits.
Right. Its size is determined by project needs. For example, a small format with a lot of content would require a relatively large live area just to fit everything in. The live area can be carefully designed to create balance and harmony, or, conversely, dynamic imbalance to guide you. And it's essential that the shape of the live area is thoughtfully related to the overall page shape and size.
Like the Census Design Factory example.
Exactly. Their work for Cabinet Graphic HAZU illustrated this by using a small, narrow primary content area placed near the top of a large, stable format to create visual movement and focus.
For multi-page documents, symmetry and composition are considered at the spread level. Each layout must work in isolation, but also in relation to the facing page and the one overleaf to keep you interested.
Yeah, the grid should allow for a conversation between pages. A visual statement on one page should be responded to on the next in a way that is distinct yet somehow similar. This ensures each page feels fresh and unique within an expected, predictable design language. SVP partners did this for the Aegis annual report, structuring pages so elements echoed each other, leading you through the spread, with variations in color, content, and type keeping it fresh.
When you introduce folds and relationship of content across pages, the design challenge changes drastically, doesn't it?
Oh, hugely. In folded formats like brochures, the relationship of content areas is in constant flux. Content must be orderly and visually compelling regardless of the fold state, whether closed, fully open, or somewhere in between. The way you interact with a folded piece dictates the information progression. For example, in a map, if the main interaction is when it's fully open, having some content upside down during unfolding isn't necessarily an issue.
But clarity is key.
Absolutely. Designers must ensure you're not confused about how to interact, as this leads to frustration and poor retention. Lab's trifold brochure for remetal tools used angled shapes and background colors that added visual interest and changed shape when folded, creating a successful relationship between flexible format and rigid information.
Production considerations are the invisible restrictions designers must account for from the outset. Things like binding requirements.
Exactly. If binding requires large gutters, the design should play off that requirement rather than fight it. Or if a piece is printed on coarse paper, the overall size might be increased slightly to allow type to appear proportionate. For websites, the grid must ensure crucial content isn't cropped off screen on smaller monitors or mobile devices. A hierarchical grid is often a good solution here.
Like Rule 29's design for Nina Paper's blog.
Right. They turned web production restrictions into an attractive site, using a strong hierarchical grid to keep crucial info above the fold, integrating type into images for specific fonts, and folded corners suggested paper, making the layout feel natural.
Let's consider how designers handle grouping a huge amount of varied information. Briani Gomez Palacio and Armin Vid's challenges designing Women of Design sound immense, accommodating varied responses, diverse info, different image formats.
Yeah, it was a big task. They created a master list of characteristics to highlight and design a flexible structure. Their system used a horizontal division across all pages. Top half for characteristics intro, bottom half for interviews. Remaining pages were for images or longer interviews.
And the critical 3-column grid they used was essential for success, neatly pulling together diverse text and images.
It absolutely was. And importantly, it also trained the readers where to look for specific information after just a few pages. This predictability within flexibility is genius.
They also strategically placed full-page image spreads with quotes.
Right, to provide visual breathing room and entice skimmers. Gomez Palacio noted that their rigid but effective structure allowed them to fit a surprising amount of information without making the pages feel too crowded or overwhelming. That's efficiency within structure, a powerful nugget.
Now to content structure. After determining format, structuring content is key. It prevents a lot of extra work later. The partnership between the message and you, the audience, forms the foundation for successful communication. The content needs to be legible, believable, natural.
And the communication should unfold captivatingly, hitting key points orderly without feeling disjointed, yet remaining unique enough to prevent boredom, compelling you to continue reading.
When thinking about the development of read progression of info, especially for multi-page documents, pacing and information hierarchy are crucial initial steps.
The story needs to unfold in a captivating way that moves you along a desired course. The cover or first statement needs to be exceptionally strong to gain interest and set the stage.
Like the Michael Osborne design example for the Smithsonian Postal Museum.
Exactly. They used a familiar progression, the Roman alphabet, to facilitate easy navigation for an exhibition requiring intimate interaction and building understanding. Simple, but effective.
For grouping information, a key to consistency is treating like items similarly. This creates a common thread for navigation and makes information more accessible.
Right. But this requires a high level of content familiarity from the designer to objectively recognize similar items and understand how groupings subjectively relate to you, the viewer. Content needs to make sense when similarly tiered items are viewed together and when different tiers occupy the same page, form a cohesive unit.
So you need to think about how someone might read just the headlines versus how they experience a single page.
Precisely. Design Sense's work for RSOC Westtech showed how consistent treatments allowed flipping through reading only one level of content without sacrificing spread cohesion.
The rhythm and flow of information groups, how they're distinguished and linked, greatly impacts accessibility. Collaborating with a copywriter ensures consistent relationships among hierarchical content groups.
You want to avoid confusing tension by maintaining a consistent proportional rhythm throughout. Page or section transitions should feel easy and natural to encourage continued engagement.
Willoughby Design's repositioning of JT magazine for a more snackable read sounds like a perfect example of focusing on rhythm and flow.
It is, and Sergio Alz's JUP newspaper also showed effective proportional relationships from title to headlines to body copy, with images pulling the eye through content.
Pacing is determined by analyzing the target audience and the piece's tone: serious, fun, authoritative.
And the type of piece also impacts pacing. Direct mail needs succinct, energetic points to quickly guide you through a cell. A magazine, consumed over multiple sittings, benefits from predictable, regular areas of rest and interest to facilitate slow consumption and absorption.
Brand Central's book on Danish advertising illustrates this well, spreading out intricate content and interspersing it with children's art and bubbly typography.
Yeah, creating a really reader-friendly experience.
Memo Productions faced a massive content challenge with Exploring Wine, over 800 pages needing space for diverse art photos, infographics, charts, sidebars.
Their solution was a primary two-column grid for the largest possible text area, minimizing awkward text runarounds. They also developed a compound grid for section openers and headers, accommodating photos or type collages that felt distinct yet related.
It's surprising how they used oversized section heads and openers. Despite limited space, these elements added interest and broke the monotony of text-heavy spreads.
Exactly. It ultimately allowed them to fit more text without losing reader interest. These elements served as accents within the flow of content and punctuate the pacing with refreshing slashes of color and image.
Douglas Riccardi of Memo Productions sums it up. Even in a simple, highly structured page layout, bold use of large type elements and vibrant color blocks can draw interest, guide the reader, and create surprise.
Through thoughtful pacing, a primary grid maximizing space, and strategic color use, they created an incredibly engaging, content-heavy layout.
Another unusual workflow. Alexander Isley, Inc., designing Kate Asher's The Works, an infographics book about NYC infrastructure, before the book was fully written. How do you even begin a project like that?
It sounds wild, right? But the secret was a detailed illustration style sheet created very early for all artists, which drove the book's illustration-centric organization. The key insight was the concurrent workflow. The writer provided text to Isley's already designed layouts, allowing the writer to fit content precisely within the grid. This simultaneous work was critical for their tight 6-month deadline.
So the grid and style sheet allowed for clockwork production?
Pretty much. It ensured designers, artists, and the author could work concurrently, adding components seamlessly even when completed by different individuals, including hundreds of illustrations simultaneously. The project resulted in a beautiful book, an Amazon.com Book of the Year. Structure enabled speed and quality.
And finally, here design faced the problem of pairing information in their book, The Geometry of Pasta, matching the right pasta shape with the right sauce.
They needed a structure to showcase a wide range of actual size pasta shapes in a single unified format. Their solution used black and white throughout, making the illustrations do the heavy lifting as graphic elements.
Visual interest came from repetition of elements to create patterns, thoughtfully composed pasta illustrations interacting with text, and interesting cropping.
As Kaz Hildebrand of Here Design noted, the underlying type grid is formal, but the use of illustrations helps make the pages feel varied. It's about using those visual elements to add flavor and personality to a rigid structure.
Let's now consider the relationship of design components, unifying and separating. Grids primarily integrate type and image, but sometimes separation is necessary for an uninterrupted storyline or to emphasize an image or pull quote.
Right. Content areas can be united or separated by techniques like how parts are treated, their relative scale, spatial relationships, or a well-thought-out organizational grid. All these things create vital context for you, the reader.
So how text and image can be separated?
Well, the grid system itself can do this. A hierarchical grid for a website, for instance, ensures distinct content areas by their repeated physical position, making navigation predictable. In print, combining wide and narrow columns can maintain a narrative flow in a main area while supporting content lives in a parallel narrow column. Typographic treatments also provide separation. Varying font face, size, or style sets off lists or captions. Sidebars or containing shapes can visually distinguish content too.
Like Michael Osborne designed for Williams-Sonoma.
Exactly. They used typographically distinguished info sections with subtle rules and paired a modern serif with an informal script for clear separation that felt natural.
Conversely, how text and image can be unified.
This can be done through a firm grid or through visual treatment, like achieving visual balance or creating that conversation between content areas we mentioned. Close physical proximity photos right next to text, or shared visual attributes like color, scale, or containing shape establish strong connections.
Bert's design group's Vida magazine tied content together with a shape breaking the photo frame, linking photo to content, and the grid's strong motion directed the eye.
And Johnson Banks posters for the British Library used illustrative type interacting directly with photography, while Martha Stewart living layouts often place text around borderless photos or integrate text into textural image areas, forging really strong visual connections.
Moving to space, the less is more principle in design. Increasing the ratio of negative space to positive content creates drama and focuses attention, right?
Absolutely. Expansive space implies great significance for the content it surrounds, and it provides crucial rest and absorption time for you.
But there's a warning. Using space to highlight unimportant content can make the piece seem unserious or frivolous.
Very true. Negative space is a very real component of every layout, just as important as the positive space. Curious's Royal Paper booklets for sappy fine paper use negative space as tangible content itself, making limited printed areas garner immediate attention.
Scale is also critical, and it's important to differentiate it from size. Size is specific dimensions.
While scale is proportionate, relative, it becomes apparent through element combinations. Scale can be adjusted after the grid and content plan are finalized to ensure proper hierarchy and prominence for key points. Disparate element sizes create dynamic compositions with motion, while less contrast creates calmer, more stable layouts.
Census Design Factory demonstrated dynamic scale for Pliva DD, linking content by adjusting image proportion to a ligature, combining image and text to form a word, leading the eye cleverly.
Tell us about 804's approach to refreshing Simons Works corporate communication, especially their massive 550-page catalog. How did they use spatial flexibility to make sense of so much product information?
Helga Reiter, a founder of 804, put it perfectly. The key was to completely simplify content to make it easy on the end user. They analyzed Simon's work products, emphasizing geometric forms and lines, which formed the basis for a new logo and the grid itself.
The layout strategically allowed enough white space in the table of contents for translations into several languages without upsetting the grid structure. Smart planning.
They consistently used lines thick and thin in white space to separate, structure, and focus information across all printed communications. It shows how space itself can be a powerful organizational tool.
And finally, Wired Magazine's groundbreaking work with Condé Nast to create a digital counterpart for the iPad. Scott Dedich's task was to ensure the app shared DNA with the print version while leveraging the new platform. How did they bridge that gap between physical and digital design while maintaining the magazine's identity?
Well, as a tech publication, this was a high bar for integrating message and medium, especially for tech-savvy readers. Working with Adobe, they created something with print aspects enhanced by interactive elements, audiovisual content, web integration, for a more complete understanding.
Even with grid and layout changes for the smaller iPad screen, the overall aesthetic was carried through via consistent art direction, a textural modular grid, and thoughtful typographic considerations.
The iPad app was groundbreaking, wasn't it? Enabling a more complete transfer of information than is possible in print, like short films, next to narrative, or flipping through multiple images.
It truly changed how they thought about design. Dadich noted that the clarity needed for UI/UX design could actually inform print design. It proved that good structure transcends the medium.
Okay, let's explore type as image. When text becomes art, sometimes content works on multiple levels, blurring the lines between text and image, which can create a deeply engaging relationship for you. What's happening in our brains when text transforms into a visual element?
It's fascinating. Beyond simply processing information with our left brain, text has powerful visual components. Block color, weight, movement, presence. Individual letter forms are graphically meaningful, and words and spaces form shapes. The key insight here is that visually stimulating typography, processed by the right brain, can actually balance the left brain's meaning processing. Some believe this genuinely aids learning and comprehension. Designers have a lot of tools for this.
One powerful way designers make text register as an image is through hand lettering and illustrative typography. Custom treatments for headlines or titles make sections stand apart, commanding attention.
Or they allow the text itself to be the primary visual driver, simplifying the layout. The subtle differences in hand lettering create an organic quality and a personal touch, greatly impacting aesthetics.
Like Elements Moving announcement.
Exactly. Inspired by 1950s scouting materials, it used illustrative and vintage typography to structure information and add visual interest beautifully.
Next, caption treatment. Captions must be closely tied to images, often forming a single visual unit. They are a distinct text element from body copy, as many readers scan for images and captions first.
Their purpose is to enhance image understanding, and designers use color, proximity, containing shapes, rules, numerals, text size, shape, and other typographic devices to effectively link captions to images.
Census Design Factory successfully linked captions to images, even on facing pages, through clever use of negative space and relative proximity. It shows you don't always need them right underneath.
Pull quotes are a common method for injecting visual typographic-based interest. They're ideal for increasing graphic power in spaces unsuitable for images, directing attention, and changing text area shape, texture, and color.
Mixing typographic sizes, colors, and weights creates a stimulating patchwork of textural areas, adding interest to the primary copy.
Type A Creative's UGA MFA catalog used pull quotes to add visual interest and punctuate conservatively designed content areas, letting the student artwork really take center stage.
Folios and wayfinding page numbers and the like are often overlooked opportunities for visual impact outside the primary content.
Totally. While their function shouldn't be compromised, small amounts of copy like numbers or single words are often viewed more as an image than text. A block of text just has more visual weight than individual words scattered about. Since these markers are typically in ample margin space, they could be used to further develop the piece's overall aesthetic.
Design Sense's work for the Wenatwaa Comedy Club boldly integrated large graphic folios, capitalizing on the club's name and years, making them big and bold to help navigation.
Theo Rosendorf's typographic desk reference for Matador required significant upfront planning, focusing on utility and mechanics for a reference volume meant for other designers. What was unique about their grid approach for such a niche, detail-oriented audience?
They developed a highly accessible grid designed around the type it would support, allowing various type sizes and styles for examples, and accommodating diagrams or writers' thoughts naturally.
After extensive exploration, they used a modified Van de Graaff Canon, a 10-column grid with 12 PUD gutters, and a 38-line baseline grid to maximize legibility for the body copy.
The true nugget here is Rosendorf's firm rule. Everything has to be validated. If something can't be explained, it gets the boot.
I love that.
This may be the only unbreakable rule in my office. This rigorous, systematic approach and upfront effort led to an end result that is as beautiful as it is useful.
Now let's talk about color, the emotional and organizational powerhouse. Color is subjective, yes, but it's based on objective science and is a paramount consideration in design. It creates the most impact and emotional response in viewers.
Varying by design subject, cultural context, personal preferences.
Absolutely. Color can be a unifying element. It's highly effective for unifying or dividing content. Color can create a field to group information or link headlines to nearby images. It also drives strong emotional connections in content-heavy applications, setting sidebars apart or adding emphasis without requiring a large size. Consistent use and repetition of color create a gestalt effect, where elements separated across a publication or website add meaning to one another, forming a complete idea.
Like Memo Productions' cookbook spreads.
Exactly. They use color floods behind text areas, echoing prominent tones in facing photography, to tie text and image and add visual interest. Very effective.
Beyond unifying, color can be an organizational tool.
Yeah.
Color coding is a familiar organizational principle seen in everything from exit signs to file folders. It can create color modules for like information.
Or distinguish content hierarchically. For example, green content is primary, tan is subordinate. Warm colors like reds and yellows tend to come forward visually. Cool colors like blues and greens recede. Designers use this property to support communication objectives. But consistency is crucial. Inconsistency leads to chaos and undermines the foundational order.
Like 804's signage for Sportschule Hennef.
Perfect example. It was color-coded to define information sections and ensure clarity, with a hierarchical grid made visible through color divisions.
Adams Morioka, known for its mastery of color, was the creative force behind the fresh and colorful Health magazine redesign. They sought a lively and energetic format that was also simple enough for the magazine's own design staff to use easily post-redesign.
Color played multiple roles there. On the cover, a bright palette created vibrancy and excitement. Throughout the magazine, color served as the primary hierarchical tool for dividing content and directing attention. Adams Morioka even created several grids, recognizing that one singular grid wouldn't solve all design challenges. Their color palettes allowed for a minimal typographic palette, utilizing scale coupled with bright colors to highlight important information.
As Sean Adams perfectly encapsulated it, magazine design is like raising a child. You put in all the right elements together, set it up for success, and then send it out into the world.
Great quote.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on grids as systematic, rational tools. But what about breaking the rules? Designing beyond the grid. Sometimes traditional, rational grid decisions just don't fit the communication purpose, perhaps for provocative content or inherently disorderly processes.
That's a great question, because even when a structure isn't strictly grid-based, structure still exists. Content might need emotional, illustrative, or linguistic organization instead. This approach still requires thoughtful consideration to ensure accessibility and avoid alienating you, the audience. Designers can choose alternative paths, but typically after mastering conventional techniques, it's about intentionality, not just randomness.
Grid deconstruction, as the name implies, starts with a grid and then intentionally modifies or distorts it to suit project needs, skewing columns, overlapping text, layering modules.
Exactly, until the original structure might be almost indistinguishable. This ensures the choice to break the grid is intentional. It can develop a more organic or provocative feeling while maintaining a basic structural framework for navigation. It's also used to create highly layered content or a texture, where the material itself is more important than individual content. Kelly Bryant Design's Auburn University poster used cutout magazine strips, overlapping and cropped bits with varying gutters, to create a dynamic texture that formed a feeling rather than focusing on individual elements.
Optical composition is a non-grid method, similar to painting or collage, relying on intuitive placement of objects to form relationships. Contrasts and connections are made based solely on the designer's judgment.
Yeah, the process generally starts with loosely connecting items and rust positioning, then refining relationships from whole to part to ensure everything fits and hierarchy and flow are met. This often results in very inviting layouts where visual interaction is paramount, establishing appreciation for strong content ties. Umbrella Design's Chemistry postcard series used cropped and repeated photography against cityscapes, building layouts optically to feel consistent despite only stamp address areas being consistently positioned.
Finally, organic design. This relies on chance operations or a non-structured process to build a composition from part to whole.
Right? It can cause disparity between pages in long-form applications like books or websites, potentially making navigation confusing where clarity is key.
But it can work well for single-part formats.
Yeah, it can offer more insight for you in single-part formats like posters or ads. Consistency is still possible by controlling the process, like all photos being cut with scissors, or content defined by a single dominant photo or illustration. Element's Yumnuts packaging layout developed organically from the dominant illustration on the front, with product name and branding drawn right into the illustration and other content designed around it.
A great example of designing organically but thinking rationally comes from Modern Dog's work for Blue Q's catalog. The client initially found Modern Dog's grid-based comps too neat and wanted a smart, fun, and a little crazy image. How do you abandon columns but still maintain consistency? That sounds like walking a tightrope.
It absolutely is. The Modern Dog team agreed with the client, abandoning columns but not consistency. They standardized margins and page markers and incorporated a strong color palette to walk that fine line between order and chaos. Robin Ray, the creative director, noted they ended up fretting over that natural placement, much more so than if we were using a grid. Each spread was built as a unit where one element's position determined the next, adding time to the process without that guiding grid.
But by using high contrast, legible typography, and organic layouts, Modern Dog maximized space, giving products the most real estate and fitting a lot of content into a 64-page catalog.
Despite the lack of a rigid grid, elements like color, typographic treatment, and content scale unified the pages into a cohesive catalog. It's a testament to the idea that structure can exist in many forms, even when it looks beautifully chaotic.
So, what does this all mean? We've journeyed through the world of grids and page layouts, from their fundamental role in bringing order to information, through the various structures and the technical considerations that go into them. We've explored their powerful use in creating hierarchy, guiding your eye, and either unifying or separating design elements. And we've even looked at the art of thoughtfully breaking them.
Yeah, it really reinforces the idea that design is both a science and an art, deeply rooted in the intention to guide your eye, to make sense of the visual world around you, and to communicate effectively. Whether the grid is invisible, providing subtle support, or boldly leading the way as a divine element itself, it's always there, working its magic to make the complex digestible. So, as you go about your day, looking at everything from a subway map to your favorite website, maybe ask yourself, how is this design guiding my eye?
Is the grid invisible, or is it boldly leading the way? And what happens when the rules of order are consciously bent or even broken to create something truly unforgettable? We hope this deep dive has empowered you to see the underlying intentionality in every design piece you encounter.